Welcome to Mythic Machines. On today's episode, we're going to be, you see we're in the garage, that means we're going to be working on the engine for the 64 panel. Now last time we were here, we saw we got it all painted, or mostly. I missed a few spots. But, no worries there. Come over here, we got it all cleaned up, got it all ready, and we're going to be assembling it today. Real quick, I'm going to mention that this is kind of a reseal, not a rebuild, as I'm not changing out bearings, which I really should, but I'm not. You know, I cleaned off the pistons, we got new rings for that because a few were broken. The reason I tore this engine down, it had water in it from sitting where it was, so we tore it down. We made sure there was no catastrophic issues. As you saw, the cylinder walls had some eating out on from the water sitting in them, and it was just really quite worn down engine. So with that all taken care of, we made sure that there's going to be no catastrophic issues right off the bat. Now I'm going to be assembling the engine, and while we assemble it, we're also going to reseal everything. We're not changing real hard components like the bearings or pistons or anything like that, even though they could be used to change. But let's begin. So first things first is we're going to change out our rear seal here, and that just slides right there. Make sure it's flush, and voila, there's your new rear main seal. Now when you assemble an engine, whether it's a rebuild, fresh build, or you just reseal it like I am, you never put an engine back together dry. By that I mean, so all your connecting pieces, so your rods, where bearings are, you know, you don't leave them dry in there like that. You don't just set the crank in and bolt it down. You always make sure to put some kind of oil or lubricant on there, so you don't have any issues like that. Because all it takes is it being dry one time, it catches metal to metal, and then you're starting all over again, and that's not a good day. So what I use is some oil. This is a STP and oil mixture. I do about 50-50 mix. So why I use STP oil mix is what it's going to be lubricating it from its whole entire life while it's running, and the STP just makes it a little bit more sticky, so it stays in place a little bit better. So it has a little bit more of a honey consistency than oil, so it's a little more sticky. You just take some, rub it on there, and if you're using oil STP mix like I am, you know, you don't have to worry about putting too much on there like you do if you are using assembly grease or something of that nature. Because if you put too much assembly grease, or if you put too much assembly lube or grease or whatever you use to build it, you always run the risk of plugging up oil lines and stuff like that, not getting oil on your first startup right away to it. That's why I prefer to use oil and STP mix. You can also use the thicker oil, like a gear oil. That all works. You just have to do a flush after, which you didn't do anyways, you know. But that's what I'm using. That's what I like to use, so that's what I'm doing. Everyone's else their own and has their own opinions on what you use. So next, I'm ready to set my crank in. Alright, so you got my crank set on. I'm gonna add a little more oil on it. Well, give it a spin around. Make sure everything's nice covered in oil. And then from there, we're ready to set our caps on. In each cap, throw some oil on it. Make sure it's smeared all the way around. And then you set your cap. Lastly, the rear cap. You want to make sure you get oil on the thrust bearing side. Set that in there just like that. Okay. Got all the caps on. Now I just got to bolt and torque it all down. Now, before you start screwing them down. It's really important, but it's really important because the torque spec for these bolts are oiled. And that means that there's oil on the threads. You just need a little bit. So, just gotta oil up your threads, then you can screw your bolt down. If you don't oil your threads, you're gonna have a different torque than if you do have oil in your threads. And you might run into problems of breaking a bolt or not. And nobody wants to break a bolt. Believe me, I've broken bolts and heads before. It really sucks. Now, something very important when you're putting mains on 350s, if you see right here, it's got a little channeled slot here. So see how it's got that little lip? See? Now your main cap could get caught like that. So you can see here how it's caught in the lip there like that, just very slightly, but it's enough to, if I try cranking that bolt down right now, I'm going to break that cap. And that's what you don't want to do. So before you even start the bolts, you always want to make sure that your caps are flush all the way down and even. Alrighty. So after you got them all ran down by loose hand tight, you got the caps on, and you also got to make sure they face the correct direction. They have an arrow pointing towards the front. You can tell because there's a little F front and an arrow pointing that way. See, so front, arrow, that going that way. We now got to torque them all down. And for this engine, which is a Gen 1 350, the torque spec, so 70s and 65 for the outside ones. So we're going to do the inside ones first. Using a torque wrench. This is just a little manual one. Nothing super fancy. I bought these off of their Tecton brand. I bought it off of Amazon. I forget how much. It was a while ago. They seem to be okay. I like to start in the middle. Do this one first. Do the other side. Yeah, so they're all at 70, and you drop it down to, so after you get all your caps on and torque down to where they need to be, you always want to give your crank a little spin, and look at that. Nice, smooth. I can easily turn it over by hand. That's what you want to see. So with that, you're ready to go on to the next part, which is putting your pistons in. Set our crank. We do number 1, or is that number 2? That's number 2 piston first. So we're going to set it for there. We're going to turn it over on its side like this. To make it a little easier. Now, that got a little beveled edge still, so we're good there. Here's our number 2 piston. We're putting it in. Doesn't have rings on it right now. You can see. Easy flux. Good. Got the bearings. Got the cap on it still. Alright, so when I took it apart, we did find that our fuse cylinders had some broken rings. So we got a new ring set for it. And with our new ring set, and we also because we want to boost the engine with the superchargers we have, we're going to have to gap the rings. Now, the ring we have in there is in order to measure the ring, so you just slide it in a little bit, you use piston, push it in about an inch, so it's pretty much flush there, that's even. Now we can measure the gap. Now, stock gap should be on this engine a 350 without boost application. Should be a 16 thousandths. That's 18, so it's a little bit bigger. So our ring 1 is going to go up to 24 thou. Now these haven't been ground or anything yet, so 24 thou, light drag on them. And how do you do that? Well, you have a proper ring gapping tool that grinds out your ring, but we don't have that here, so we're using Danger Disc. Alright, so this is what I'm using here. Is it the most ideal? No. Is it a good idea? Definitely not. If you saw a machine shop doing this, would you ever bring your engine there? Of course not. But train. But as I was saying, not a great idea. Definitely don't want to be doing this. But that's what I got, so that's what I'm doing. So let's start. So, grind it open a little bit, come back over here, recheck it, around 28, 30, a lot bigger than I wanted, but that's what I gotta do for all of them. Then after you grind it, you gotta, after that, you assemble the piston. So you got our oil wiper, alright, so that's our oil wipers in. These you don't gap. No, it doesn't really matter about that, but so I got one ring there, I got one ring there, and one right there. So I got one here, one there, and one right over here. Now you don't try and put them over here, because that's where it pushes the pressure on the cylinder wall on the sides here, so you don't want to ever put a ring gap on the side there. Alright, so that's the piston assembled. It has the rings on it. Has your rings. It's got your wiper. The ring gapped. Now you're ready to put in the cylinder. So, when it's ready to put in the cylinder, you take your cap off. I have little caps that go over the bolts. They're just little vacuum cap assortment. The reason you do this because you got to knock it in there. You don't want your bolt to take out your crank. So you put your little caps on, take your oil, make sure you got a good coat of oil all over. And you also make sure you got a good coat of oil all over your pistons. Rings lined up. You got your ring compressor set up. Use this to crank it all down. Make sure it's all nice and flat. Ready to get put in there. So you get it on there. You get it all set. You just tap it in. You grab your connecting rod, you guide it down. so you knock all the way down against the crank. So make sure your bearing's still on there. Knock it down against the crank. You see it's going to crank, so you can just pull your little caps off, and you can put your in there. You can put your rod cap on, put your nuts on, and tighten it down. Of course, you put your oil or assembly lube, whatever you're using, on, and then you can button that all up. And then these are torqued down to 40 to 45. And then once you get it on, get it torqued, give it a nice turn, give it a few rotations, and then set it back. And that is a smooth rolling engine right there. For now at least, until I get the rest of them on. Alrighty, so these are my last two pistons. These are my last two pistons I have to put in. I want to show you the difference between them two. Some oh-nos and what you want to look out for. So this piston, you know, any way you flip and flop it, it goes under its own weight. This one, you can see, does not. So this is what you want. Sweet, moving. And this is done with, you know, I can shake it around, it doesn't move it. This one's a little stiff. You know, I can still move it by hand. And it doesn't seem like it's binding up or anything. It's just a little stiff. And then also, what you don't want to see is side skirt wear like that. Okay, so that's been rubbing pretty bad. So I gotta clean that up before I put it back together. Now normally when you see something like that, or stiffness like this, you go, okay, complete rebuild. New bearings, new pistons, all that shebang. But I'm not a rich man, so. And I'm mostly building this engine, the block's not the best. So I'm just slapping it together, seeing what it lasts for. Anyways, that's what I wanted to show you. Alright, so I got them all, let's go all together. Give it one turn over to show. So voila, turns over, it's pretty smoothish for a worn out engine. But there's no real hard gaps, there's no stops, there's no real issues or problems. Next I'm going to put my oil pump on, which is right here, which is this right here. That's going to go on right up here. So I already put a new clip on. I put the new clip on, my extender there. Slide that down the hole. Make sure dowels line up and slide on. Down all the way. Oil on the bolt. And then this gets tightened down to 65 foot-pounds. There we go. And that's pretty much that. Ready to put my oil pan on. So there's that. That's pretty much all the bottom end together there. Ready to put the oil pan on. Before I do that, I'm going to put the cam gear and everything in so I can see it easily as I put it in. So we're going to do that next. Alright, so here, this is the can I pulled out. Now you see here, there's not really lope left on it compared to that one. the same spot. So we're using this cam. Now it's still a stock Chevy cam. It's out of a different 350. Not junkyard, but out of the 350 that's in my brother's 72 truck. Because he put a Lopi cam in it with a supercharger, so this has been sitting on the shelf for a bit. Now normally, when you replace cams, you also want to replace the cam's bearings. I forgot to get some. And I already got all the parts and everything here, so we're not worried about it. So we're going to put the cam in. Make sure it feels good. If it feels somewhat good, we're going to go with it. When you saw when I was putting it in, I was spinning it around, trying to tilt it back a little forward, up a little, just to get in the next hole and get in there. That's what you got to do to get these in, especially if they're horizontal, not vertical. If they're vertical, it's a lot easier to put them in. When they're sitting on a stand like this, they're a little more difficult. Not impossible, but difficult. Alrighty. So after that, get our timing gear on, which we have a new one of those. Alright, just like that. Use a puller, pull the gear off. Simple and easy. And you went from a single to a double roller chain. The timing chain, because they're just a little bit better. And since we already had it apart, use the motor balancer. Got the timing gear all the way down on the crank. Got the cam in. Sprocket on the cam, and that is torqued down to 20 pounds. Specifications is 18 to 20, so I put it at 20. And with that, I'm ready to put my cover on, and then my oil pan on. I was going to get my oil pan and my timing cover on and call it there for a video, but I completely forgot, until I was just cleaning off my timing cover there, that I didn't paint the oil pan or the timing cover or the valve covers. So I'm going to make sure I do that. I'm going to get them all cleaned off, get them all painted. So next video, it's going to be putting those on. They're going to be nice painted, probably white, that's what I'm thinking. And then I can flip it over, and then we'll do the heads. So, this is where I'm going to call this video. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed. And as always, if you'd be so kind to like, comment, subscribe. And there's more videos for you to watch. You can see more about my 64 panel that I'm building the engine for, or my 67 Cougar that I'm building to go racing. Other than that, thank you for watching, and until next time.